2.5 years ago, I stood here, at the southernmost point on Earth, at the time being the youngest woman in history to ever attempt something as crazy as skiing alone to the South Pole. At this point, I had spent 48 days on the coldest, driest, windiest continent on Earth. I'd been all alone, carrying a sled weighing over 100 kilograms, and hadn't even seen a living thing in the entire journey because almost nothing can survive in such harsh conditions. And even though I skied while it was summer in Antarctica, the temperatures could still drop as low as minus 40 degrees Celsius. And if you, like me, thought Antarctica was flat, because it always looks flat in the photos, I tell you now that the journey to the South Pole is a constant uphill battle and always in headwind. But as in life, we don't always get to choose our storm, but we can choose how we carry it. Antarctica is located at the bottom of the globe and is bigger than both Australia and India combined. I traveled one of the most classic routes from Hercules Inlet to the South Pole, where I traveled a distance of 1,130 kilometers. Now, by the sound of this introduction, you might think that I should reconsider my hobbies, or that I was born with skis on my feet, or that the cold temperatures is like a close friend of mine. Well, it's not at all like that. I grew up in the city center of Bergen, a city between 7 mountains, with my 3 sisters, young mom and dad. And we weren't exactly an outdoorsy family, but every Sunday I was dragged up the mountains, no exceptions. I was promised so much hot chocolate and candy if we just made it to the top. And I don't know if you can tell by the girl in white by the end there, I hated it. I just could not see why we should be outside when life was so much more fun indoors with a Game Boy. But after spending an entire summer underwater on a holiday when I was 9, I found the activity that truly suited me. And 10 years later, I had won numerous national championships in swimming. I trained 25 hours a week and had developed a set of personal qualities that was about to shape who I was becoming. At this point, I am 17 years old and I felt invincible. I had no doubt in my mind that I could do anything in this world. An Olympic champion in swimming, of course. Maybe take a trip to the moon or just kiss the coolest guy in class. But as you all know, life is not a walk in the park. At 19, I got mononucleosis. In Norway, we call it the kissing disease, although there weren't a lot of kissing going around at the time. I lost a bunch of friends. I couldn't train, I couldn't work, I couldn't study. I got a chronic fatigue syndrome. So I had to sleep for a whole year. So how do you come back from something like that? Well, I decided to go back to one of the very first things I learned as a human, walking. First, short walks, and then they got longer and longer as both the body and mind were reminded of the beauty of simply moving forward. And once I was finally able to get outside, I just felt this kind of freedom and joy that I'd never experienced before on a hike. And for the first time, I started to truly appreciate the values that my parents had tried to pass on to me about the power of fresh air and nature. So I kept walking and walking and walking until one day I decided I wanted to walk to the Camino de Santiago, a pilgrimage route across northern Spain, 900 kilometers alone. Because the hardest part about living with fatigue isn't just the tiredness, it's the fear of becoming tired. And I knew I couldn't step into adult life being afraid of feeling worn out. So because I physically managed to walk across the country, and also because I shifted my mindset from what I couldn't do to what I could do, this trip became proof. Proof that I was healthy again. And I find it so powerful that one personal win like this can spark a whole chain reaction where momentum is built and one victory can lead to the next. So after Spain, I couldn't stop. I biked, I ran, I hiked, I even climbed to the top of Aconcagua, the highest mountain outside the Himalayas. I felt like every step gave me back a part of myself. And because every step made me feel free and aligned with my values again. And 3 years ago, I decided I wanted to walk to the end of the world. How do you come up with an idea like that? Well, in 2020, I lost my mother to cancer. She was only 57 years old. My mom lived a healthy life. She was strong, full of energy, and always positive. One day, she came home and told us that she had cancer in her stomach. She said that the prognosis was bad, but calm, she added, it'll probably be fine. A few weeks later, the doctors told us that the cancer had spread. And from that point, life was all about giving Mom the best quality of life with the time she had left. And after 2 years of fighting the hardest battle, one day, Mom lost against cancer. Suddenly, she just wasn't here anymore. That one person that had been by my side since the day I was born. And I found it so hard to understand, because there didn't seem to be any reason why her life, of all lives, should be taken away from us. Is there even a point in living healthy if life can just be taken away by random chance anyway? These thoughts started to eat away at me and made me lose all motivation to train, go to work, to be outside, to be with friends, all the things that we know are the most important things when life gets heavy. I just could not bring myself to do any of them. So, but all the things, yeah, I felt like the grief of losing my mother took away the spark of me. Because grief is a deeply uncomfortable feeling, right? And our bodies crave good ones. So we distract ourselves by saying things like, I don't want to think about this. And I'm not different than anyone else. So what do you think I did? I laid on my couch and I scrolled on Instagram. And that's where I come across an advertisement for Gore-Tex, where I see Molly Hughes becoming the youngest woman in history to ski solo to the South Pole. I'm instantly drawn to this image and fascinated by the coincidence. Don't get me wrong, I'm fully aware that the algorithm had calculated that this was something that would catch my attention. But the timing felt different, because I was in such desperate search for some sort of meaning in this life. A quick little Google search told me that I had a tiny chance to beat Molly's record. And then I just decided, with the almost carefree thought that if Molly can do it, then so can I. But deep down, I knew that by deciding this would be my way of processing grief, by doing what I had done to overcome my own illness a few years earlier, by being outside, moving my body for a long time. There was just a teeny tiny problem about this high-pole plan. I was completely unqualified. I had spent my childhood in swimming pools, not on skis. And I didn't know how to use a camp stove or a compass, and I'd only bought my first tent a few years earlier. And I knew a dozen of people who were much more suited for this kind of expedition than I was. But once I make a decision, I never look back. So to go to somewhere you've never been, you have to do things you've never done. First thing I did was to set a series of tiny goals. Find a sled, load it up, and start training. I crossed different national parks in Norway. I also later crossed the Greenland ice cap and realized, to my own surprise, that the winter wilderness is quite fun. So I trained by dragging car tires around town for hours every week to simulate the sled. I learned how to fix a stove, how to use a satellite phone. I did everything in my power to prepare. Still, I met people who said that I didn't have enough experience and that I would never get the sponsors. And even that I wasn't mentally strong enough, even though they just met me. Some focused too much on my body, my weight, my gender, even my looks. And as this was a goal way outside my own comfort zone, I started to believe them and to doubt myself. I wondered, are they right? Am I going to embarrass myself? But I had already come so far. And to quote the polar explorer and author Erling Hauge, the one who says it's possible and the one who says it's impossible, they're usually both right. And as I had made it all the way to the start line of this expedition, things became crystal clear. I reminded myself that failure is not the opposite of success. It's a part of it. if I fail, I would learn. And more importantly, my value as a human didn't depend on a compass point in Antarctica. My family, they love me. Even though I've achieved things, or if I don't, they will always love me. And I had also done a full risk assessment. I was prepared for emergencies. And most importantly, I had promised myself that I would never take a risk that could end my life. My family had already lost a family member, and I would not do that to them again. And so I would go. Not because I was ready, but because I was willing. And honestly, you'll never feel ready to do the things that scare you. And that's simply because our brains are wired to protect us. And change always comes with a risk. So we protect ourselves by saying, maybe tomorrow, or I'll try next year. But waiting for later, that's a chance, a witness not everyone gets. So I went off, confident, committed, ready to face anything except pneumonia. On day 2, I got sick. My head was pounding and my throat and chest was really, really hurting, and I had to remind myself of an advice I got from polar explorer Børge Osland before I left. He told me to focus on getting through the first 10 days, because that's when the body isn't used to the stress yet, that's when the routines are not in place, and that's when it's the shortest way back home. And so, because the body isn't, I found the right antibiotics in my medical kit, and I clung to that piece of advice. And when I was finally able to get outside of the tent again, I didn't aim for the South Pole. I just aimed to make it through lunch. So, because big dreams are too heavy if you carry them all at once. We carry them in pieces, one small step at a time. And honestly, I've used this 10-day rule ever since I got back from Antarctica. 10 days in a new job or a new hobby or a new relationship. Give it 10 days before you decide how it feels, because most storms feels impossible at the start. Antarctica has its ups and downs, but the hardest part is this. Every day, the same white, the same wind, the same direction. It's like walking onto a blank page without having any idea if you're any closer than yesterday. And maybe that's what it's like for the future, to look into the future for a lot of us. How do we know that we're moving forward if we don't have a clear goal? Lucky for me, I had a compass strapped to my chest and a clear goal, fixed in my mind like a lighthouse. So that meant I didn't have to focus on everything or the South Pole. I just focused on the next hour, the next hot chocolate, and the next latitude. Many days, I ended up talking to Pippi Longstocking. Do you know her? Yeah, the children's book character. Because before I left, people kept asking me, why go alone? And I don't know about you guys, but I didn't have any friends who wanted to come with me to Antarctica. And forcing someone didn't seem like a great idea either. But being alone for 48 days is tough, but it's also very honest. If things went well, I could pat my back and be happy. If things didn't go well, I learned. And you learn a lot about yourself when there's no one else to blame. So if I could have brought someone, that would have been Pippi. Fearless, strong, and unshakably confident. And along the way, I started to give Pippi the voice of my comfort zone. You know, the voice that asks you to stay in bed just a little bit longer, hit the snooze button at least 10 times before you get up. The one that says it's too cold, too far, too tired. I started to give her that voice. And that meant that I had to talk back to her and started saying things like, come on, Pippi, I know you're tired, but we can do this. We still have so much more power left to give. And I had to step into this kind of weird but clear and brave leader. And in doing so, I accidentally became really good at self-leadership. So together with Pippi, we made it all the way to 90 degrees south. And out there in the cold, with everything I owned in a single sled, I learned what truly matters. You don't have to feel ready. Small steps is what takes you to the finish line. Fear is normal. And the most important thing, self-talk really matters. And together, it's not talent that takes you far, it's willpower. And in the end, you get to choose what you carry. Because people think this story is about Antarctica, right? But really, it's about something else. It's about what happens when you take away all the noise, all the notifications, the expectations, the extra weight, and you're left with just the essentials. Just what fits in your sled, just what fits in your heart. Out there, I learned that we don't get to choose every storm, and we don't always get to keep the people that we love. But we can choose how we carry them with us. Through our values, our courage, our belief that even when it's hard, we'll keep moving forward no matter what. So maybe the question is, what are you willing to carry? And what are you finally ready to leave behind? Because when the world gets brutally honest, that's when you find out what really matters and what truly lives in you. Thank you.